Swallows and Amazons by Arthur Ransome. Read by Alex Jennings. Chapter 12. Leading Lights. That night the swallows were very late to bed. Soon after the Amazon's little white sail had vanished beyond the peak of Darien, Captain John took the hammer and a few nails and the 2 candle lanterns and went to the harbour with mate Susan to help him, while the able seaman and the boy washed and wiped after the feast. "You know what they said about the harbour being marked?" said John, showing Susan the stump with the white cross on it. "Well, this is one of the marks, and the other is that tree with a fork in it, and a bit of bark gone just below the fork. Those Amazons can come into the harbour without bothering about the rocks by keeping those 2 in line. Captain Nancy did it to show me. It's quite simple when you know how. But in a real harbour, there are lights on marks like that, so that ships can find their way in the dark. I'm going to make the marks into leading lights, so that we can make a night attack on the Amazon and then find our way back, however dark it is." He drove a nail into the middle of the white cross on the stump and hung one of the lanterns on it. Then he and Susan went to the foot of the forked tree. The fork was high above their reach. "Are you going to climb up and put the lantern in the fork?" asked Susan. "No, Mr. Mate, it's no good doing that, for then only you and I will be able to climb up and light it. We must have it somewhere where we can all light it, except Roger," said the mate. "He isn't allowed to use matches." "That's true," said Captain John. "We needn't make it lower than the highest Titty can reach. But if we make it too low, it will be no good. We must be able to see it above the bushes. You go down to the harbour and stand behind the stump and as near to the water as you can." Susan went back and stood behind the stump, which was about 10 yards from the water's edge. She stood on the edge of the water. "Can you see the fork of the tree?" John called out to her. "Yes," said Susan. He put his hand on the trunk of the forked tree, as high up as he could reach. "Can you see my hand?" "Yes." "Can you still see it?" He moved his hand slowly down the trunk of the tree. "No, I can't," said Susan. He raised it a few inches. "I can see it now," said Susan. "Blow your whistle for Titty," said Captain John, and mate Susan blew her whistle. Titty and Roger came running. John held his hand where it was until they came. Then he asked Titty to try if she could reach it. She just could. "Good," said Captain John. "What for?" said Titty. Captain John did not answer. He drove in a nail just above the place where his hand had been. Then he hung the second lantern on it. "Now see if you can open the lantern." Able Seaman Titty stood on tiptoe and opened the lantern. "But what's it for?" she asked. "You'll see as soon as it's dark," said Captain John. "I can't reach it," said Roger, after trying. "You won't have to," said Captain John. "Not until you are allowed to use matches," said the mate, "and by then you'll be tall enough." As soon as it began to grow dark, the whole crew of Swallow were at the harbour again. John gave the able seaman the matches, and she lit both lanterns while the boy watched. Then all 4 of them embarked. "Roger ought to be in bed," said the mate. "It won't take long," said Captain John, "and we can't leave him alone." "Anyway, I'm not sleepy," said Roger. They rowed away down the lake. The dark came fast overhead. Stars shone out. Owls were calling. The edges of the lake disappeared under the hills. They could see the outlines of the hills, great black masses pressing up into the starry sky. Then clouds came up over the stars, and they could not even see where the hills ended and the sky began. Suddenly, high in the darkness, they saw a flicker of bright flame. There was another, and then a pale blaze lighting a cloud of smoke. They all looked up towards it, as if they were looking at a little window, high up in a black wall. As they watched, the figure of a man jumped into the middle of the smoke, a black, active figure beating at the flames. The flames died down, and it was as if a dark blind were drawn over the little window. Then a new flame leapt up, and again the man was there, and then that flame died, like the others, and there was nothing but the dark. "It's savages," said Titty. "I was sure there must be somewhere in those woods." "It's the charcoal burners," said John. "The natives at the farm are asking if we'd seen them. We'd have seen them before if we'd been sailing this way." "They look like savages," said Titty. "Let's go and see them." "We can't now, anyhow," said mate Susan. "How are we going to get home?" said Roger. "I can't see anything at all." Captain John was also wondering the same thing. He could not be sure where they were. He could not see the lanterns on the marks behind the harbour, but that was natural enough, because they would be hidden by the high rocks unless the Swallow was opposite the entry. And of course he could not be quite sure that he could get in even if he could see the lights. He knew he ought to be able to, but after all, he had never tried. It is one thing to row in using marks in daylight, when if anything goes wrong you can look about and see where you are, but quite another thing when you are wrapped up in darkness and have nothing to count on but the lights. Anyhow, the first thing to do was to find them. The sight of the charcoal burners up on the hillside had shown him more or less where he was and which way the boat was pointing. But there were no stars to help him, and he was glad he had brought the compass. He took a match and lit it, and looked at the little compass, moving it round until the line marked at one side of it was opposite the dark end of the needle. That showed him where the north was. Happily, it was just where he had expected it to be. He pulled Swallow round and lit another match, and had another look at the compass to make sure. Then he began rowing again, taking Swallow northwards up the lake. "This isn't proper compass steering," he said. "We ought to have the compass fixed and a light shining on it all the time. What we really need is an electric torch. I wish I'd thought of getting one for a birthday present. Anyhow, all hands keep a lookout and sing out anybody as soon as our lanterns show." A minute or two later, Titty saw them, flickering among the trees and then disappearing again as they were hidden by the big rocks south of the island. John paddled slowly on. "There they are again," said Susan. "Close together," said Titty. John turned round from his rowing and had a good look at the two small stars twinkling over the water. "Right," he said, and then, remembering Captain Nancy, "Now, I'm going to do nothing but row, if you'll keep your eyes on the lights." "We can't see anything else, anyhow," said Titty. "Are they still close together?" asked John. "Fairly close," said Susan. "Which light is which side of which?" said John. "What?" said Susan. "Where is the top light?" asked Captain John. "A bit to the left of the low one," said Susan. John pulled a stroke or two, pulling a little harder with his right. "Sing out as soon as it is just above it." "It's above it now." "Now it's a bit to the right of it." John pulled his left. "Above it." "Tell me the moment it is one side or the other." He rowed on. Mate Susan, Able Seaman Titty, and the boy Roger watched the lights and sang out the moment the top one showed a little to left or right of the lower one. With so many lookout men, Captain John might have been content, but just once he looked round for himself and saw the two lights, one above the other, like the stop called a colon. At last, John just grazed a rock with his starboard oar. "We must be close in now," he said. "I'm going to scull over the stern." "The lights are exactly one above another," said Susan. John had shipped his oars and was now sculling over the stern. Susan and Titty had wriggled out of the way. The boat moved on in the darkness. "The lights are quite close to us," said Roger, and as he said it, there was a gentle scrunch as the Swallow's nose touched the soft, pebbly beach of the little harbour. Captain John had used his leading lights for the first time, and had made his harbour in pitch dark. "That is going to win us the war with the Amazons," he said with great delight. "It's the one thing they think we can't do, and we can. They think they are safe from us at night." They scrambled ashore and unhooked the lanterns from the nails, moored Swallow by lantern light, and by lantern light found their way through the brambles and bushes back to the camp. 10 minutes later, the lanterns were blown out, one in each tent, and about half a minute after that, the whole camp was asleep.